Well, thank you for tuning in today to Stephen's World Talk Radio. My name is Stephen Sindoni, and today's date is May 5th, 2012. In today's program, I will continue my recent interview with scientist and inventor Jerry Thomas. Jerry, welcome and thank you for agreeing on short notice to do a second interview to continue discussing Free Energy 101 and a whole lot more.
Glad to be here, Steve. Hope you're doing well today.
I'm doing very well today. I feel a little bit better today. What a difference a day makes. I'd like to get started, Jerry, right away and talk about Free Energy 101 and the reason you wrote the book. And because people need to know that this information is available to the public, and a book like this does exist. Jerry, why don't we get right to it? Tell us about the book and why you wrote it.
Well, the book is sort of the verbal discussion of what I was going through in my process of inventing and meeting other inventors to bring free, what's called free energy devices to the world. The idea being a device that produces more energy out than it puts in. So originally it was meant to be a briefing for investors so that they could be brought up to speed on the various technologies and ideas in this area.
And as a result of you delving into this area, what did you first learn?
In the first interview, Steve, we talked a little bit about that, where I invented a device of questionable performance. I was inspired to put something together to see what it did, and that in that process of engineering something on my own, I quickly realized that there was some unusual energy that is worth exploring.
Well, absolutely. Just to let the listeners know, in our interview on May 3rd, we discussed an invention that you created that had an amazing effect on your personal life. Would you like to quickly share that?
Yes. The device that we briefly talked about in the first interview and a little bit here was an energetic device producing a type of energy that has yet to be understood and recognized by the scientific world or the world in general. And the impact on my life, of course, is that it caused me or allowed me to have a great passion for this subject, this topic that sort of transcends skepticism, doubt, all these human frailties that we all bring to the table when we pursue any endeavor. A lot of people pursue endeavors without the kind of background I was fortunate to have in something so unusual and exotic.
Was this the reason that you decided you were going to write the book Free Energy 101?
There were a number of reasons, Steve, why I chose to write the book. It had to do with discovering these things and discovering others that had discovered unusual things as well. The information for us in the scientific world was sadly lacking. There simply was no source of information on things like this.
And the reason for that?
Well, one can speculate on a variety of reasons. One reason could be that the topic has just been tremendously suppressed to keep it out of the public arena, to keep it out of the knowledge of the people of the world. It's a case of the blind leading the blind. If people don't know about it, they can't talk about it and move forward with it. So by people not being aware of it or knowing about it, then, of course, nothing can happen.
That's exactly right. If what you don't know is usually something that's very, very important. And it just seems today that as soon as a breakthrough is put out there, whether it's the internet or the newspapers, how quickly that story just fades away, never to be seen again.
Yes, and a story like this, and in fact a documented effort like this, an actual book that was lacking and missing when I got into this, and even up to this time, 2012, there are now, 2012, a variety of sources that talk about these kinds of things However, when you go back 10, 20, 30 years, the amount of information is very small on the actual nature and content of the energies, whether it be for healing or free energy or transportation. These types of books and dissertations were sadly lacking because most of this exotic stuff has been tied up by the industrial military complex and kept extremely private by very wealthy banker elitists for their own personal gain at the expense of the entire world and the entire public.
Well, I'm glad that you've taken pen in hand and you've written this book. I've read it a number of times, and in our first interview we touched just very briefly on one of the areas. For example, you've got stories and chapters in the book about weird electricity, flying dump trucks, and one of the things I'd like for you to share with us is your Chapter 8 is Brewing Real Deals, and in the book there, I believe in that chapter, you discussed cold fusion as one of those nuances. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, a lot of the stories in the book are short and brief, and I think a lot of readers will like, the idea that they got the information. It's just that in a lot of cases I think people may want a lot more. So in the section that I did on cold fusion, by the way, I use catchy little titles. That section is called Cold Fusion Coffee and Free Energy Donuts. my efforts to add a little levity to something that should be an enjoyable experience and process to learn about such wonderful things. The information I provide there, again, is brief, so that people get an inkling of what's going on. I talk about this character, Rossi, who's been popular for the last year or two or three in regards to what people call cold fusion, or LENR, low energy nuclear reactions. And these catchy scientific sounding words are now in the mainstream. They're now in the news, and in fact getting a lot of attention. And these terms, in fact, are starting to get a lot of funding from sources that have traditionally shied away from this sort of thing. The bombshell I would like to drop here today, if I may, on Rossi cold fusion and the Defcalion efforts should be of great interest to a lot of people who are putting a lot of money into this. Would you like to hear some of that?
Absolutely, Jerry.
Again, as people are hearing me say, a lot of money is going into this. What the public what has been withheld from the public is the shakiness of the state of the technology that Rossi has and the Greek people have. I have very good insider sources of information who shall remain anonymous. There will be many people who will want to know where I get my information from, and that will have to remain anonymous. The insider position, which I am fortunate to have, indicates to me that the devices that the public is hearing about at this time, May 2012, are extremely shaky. These people, these companies are attempting to make the units available in licenses, they say, in the near term. And again, based on the insider information that I have, people may find themselves at the short end of a stick, having invested great time and money into these things, only to have to wait and wait and wait. And this really is a bombshell, because the world lacks this critical insider information that would allow them to make better decisions about the types of technologies they invest in. And to add to the bombshell, there's one more piece of the puzzle that the public has not been made aware of, and that piece is that my insiders are ahead of these other people.
Well, information is power, Jerry, and after talking with you last week, I got the guidance that you needed a website, and that's why your website, freeenergy101.webs.com was spawned because I realized it was an idea whose time had come. So I want to discuss your website a little bit because I think it's important as we go forward that what we share today, that we also include on your website a page, for example, news or updates to give people this information, because what I believe is, and I perceive that the world is not going to find it anywhere else, because there are a few people with the courage, my friend, and I call you friend, and I know that what you're doing is something that's needed and necessary, and that's why I'm committed to help you every step along the way. So let's discuss your website. First off, it's freeenergy101.webs.com. That's free, F-R-E-E, energy, E-N-E-R-G-Y, 101.webs.com. And Jerry Thomas is going to explain to us what you're going to find on his website. Jerry, you take it away, please.
Yes, well, the website, of course, has just been started with the great assistance of Steve there. So it's a little basic at the moment. There's a little bio about me. There's some of the videos, interviews that we've done. There's a web store, which, again, is sparsely populated at the moment since this has just begun. There's a donations page for those who find they care to help with a project we'll talk about in a minute, and other projects that are coming along. Of course, there's a page to order the book on as well, so that people can get a copy and read and come up to speed. You know, that what this is about for a lot of people should be about, is coming up to speed on a variety of exotic ideas and technologies so that they're better informed. You know, Foster Gamble Thrive was recommending people just get better informed so they can make better decisions. The bombshell I dropped on cold fusion, I've already advised one very wealthy man who was going to buy a license from Rossi and spend considerable amounts of his money, only perhaps to be in great financial distress for having made that decision. And on my advice alone, based on my extreme insider position, which I'm fortunate to have, he has suspended that financial activity. So just to give some people some idea of why, I might be someone they might want to listen to and learn from.
Now, Jerry, regarding the donations, I like to stick with this if I can. We've got the donation page on freeenergy101.webs.com. And for those who go to the site and don't see that page, if it mysteriously disappears, because when you have information like Jerry does, and sometimes things are there and they're not there, which we spoke of earlier, and so you may have to put in /APPS and then /donations thereafter for that page to mysteriously appear. Or you can contact Jerry, and Jerry will be more than happy to take your donation from you.
Free, what's called free energy devices to the world. The idea of being a device that produces more energy out than it puts in. So originally it was meant to be a briefing for investors so that they could be brought up to speed on the various technologies and ideas in this area.
And as a result of you delving into this area, what did you first learn?
In the first interview, Steve, we talked a little bit about that, where I invented a device of questionable performance. I was inspired to put something together to see what it did, and in that process of engineering something on my own, I quickly realized that there was some unusual energy that is worth exploring.
Well, absolutely. Just to let the listeners know, in Well, thank you for tuning in today to Stephen's World Talk Radio. My name is Stephen Sindoni, and today's date is May 5th, 2012. In today's program, I will continue my recent interview with scientist and inventor Jerry Thomas. Jerry, welcome and thank you for agreeing on short notice to do a second interview to continue discussing Free Energy 101 and a whole lot more.
Glad to be here, Steve. Hope you're doing well today.
I'm doing very well today. I feel a little bit better today. What a difference a day makes. I'd like to get started, Jerry, right away and talk about Free Energy 101 and the reason you wrote the book, and because people need to know that this information is available to the public, and a book like this does exist. Jerry, why don't we get right to it? Tell us about the book and why you wrote it.
Well, the book is sort of the verbal discussion of what I was going through in my process of inventing and meeting other inventors to bring